There are many dark arts when it comes to building your computer. The power supply potentially has the darkest of arts out of all of them. The componentry and so much stuff goes into these, and it's all contained in a little black box. For example, why does all of the higher end power supplies have this 80+ sticker on them? In this video, I'm going to go over how to choose a power supply that is going to help your gaming system achieve the results that you are looking for. This is the Project 7 series where I go into long-form detail about how to build a computer from scratch, or how you can modify one that you already have. If you're interested in this kind of gaming content, go ahead and click that subscribe button right there. And while you're at it, click the like button too. When it comes to power supplies, the 80+ rating is one of the first things that you need to understand in order to make an educated decision about what power supply to get. So let's talk about what this 80+ actually is. 80+ is a level of efficiency where 50% of the load should result in an 80% efficiency. So what does that mean? That means if my system needs 100 watts in order to do its job at 50% load, from the wall, a power supply is going to draw 125 watts. We're going to see 100 watts provided in the form of electricity to the other components. We're going to see 25 watts being lost primarily due to heat and other forms of resistance that is going to dissipate into the air. So the standard here would be 80+ can achieve that ratio, and that's the bare minimum. That's where this standard starts. As you start to move up this chain, that level of efficiency starts to increase. So using that same 100 watt draw from the wall, we would essentially take 100 watts divided by the efficiency ratio here, which in this case is 90. That would draw an additional 11 watts from the wall that we would lose in the form of resistance and heat. That is exactly why the gold standard is the one that I recommend that the majority of gaming-oriented systems are going to recommend as well. So what power supply do I actually recommend? Well, if you search Tom's Hardware and PC Gamer, you're going to see very consistent power supply recommendations. So this Corsair RM750 is consistently rated one of the best gaming-oriented power supplies that are on the market. Now, I will tell you, I don't geek out on all of the componentry in the power supply. If you want to dive into it, and if you really want to geek out though, I will include these links down below. Feel free to peruse and take a look at them. But ultimately, for me, I trust the recommendations from PC Gamer and Tom's Hardware. I can also tell you personally, I have used Corsair and EVGA on almost every single build that I have done since the late 90s. So I have used these guys for a long time. I trust them. I trust their componentry. I know they have good hardware. So I have zero qualms recommending either of those brands from a power supply standpoint. But if you're looking for the other brands, there are going to be more in here, but you're going to be very consistently seeing Corsair as one of the top. So Seasonic comes up quite a bit as well. The other thing that I highly encourage you to look at is the modularity. You want a fully module power supply, in my opinion. That allows you to remove cables, or actually just, you don't attach them. You don't attach cables that you don't need. So if you don't need a whole bunch of extra SATA cables, for example, if you're not even running a physical hard drive, you don't need to plug that cable into the power supply. So you completely leave that out from your cable management and from your airflow management. This right here is an example of a non-modular power supply. You can see a whole stack of cables coming out of it, and you're going to have to manage all of those cables at the same time in order to figure out where things should go. Yes, you're saving a good bit of money. This is a lower cost power supply from a wattage standpoint, but it's also not modular, which reduces some of the manufacturing complexities, which ultimately means it's going to be at a lower price. to me, it's not worth it, especially if you're targeting a $2,000 gaming system like Project 7. So let's dive into the efficiency curve that EVGA has just printed on the side of their box. You can see the gold rating is the red hash lines going across from 50 to 100%. You can also see the maximum efficiency is within inside of that 50% range. So you probably actually have a wider range than 50%, say from 40 up to 60, where you're really in that sweet spot. But if you notice above that, we actually have somewhat higher efficiency, around 40%, with the yellow line. But you can see that this particular power supply exceeds the gold rating across the board. Now, here's what they're not telling you. They can submit a golden sample for testing. That golden sample can then be used for marketing purposes, and those are the numbers they're putting on the side of the box. So if we come back over here to our PC part picker, we have choose a power supply right here. You have a wealth of options all throughout. The first things that I recommend you do is adjusting the wattage. I highly recommend at least 700 watts. I do not recommend for most gaming systems to go over 1,000. At this point, it kind of just is overkill. That is the range that you're going to be able to use a high-end CPU, a high-end GPU. You're going to be able to power RGBs off of that. You're going to be able to power pumps. You're fully going to power your motherboard. That's not going to be a problem. So you're going to be able to power a lot with a wattage range somewhere in between there. The other thing that I've mentioned, I would highly suggest targeting a gold power supply. Next, we're going to choose Seasonic, Corsair, EVGA. Those are the brands that I have seen very frequently. Those are the brands that I would tend to trust in this regard. The last one that you need to set is right here. This is the modularity. We're going full modular. No semi, which means some of the cables can be removed and some of them can't, and absolutely no. You want a modular power supply. And then we can go ahead and sort it by price, and we can see all of our options. So you can see some older EVGAs right here, and to me, those are perfectly fine. That's actually why I went with this one right here, the G+. But you also have that same exact power supply that I was just talking about sitting right here. Now, in this day and age, power supplies are hard to get a hold of, and so you're going to see some price creep. But this power supply, which is highly rated, is coming in at $120 for the 750 variety. That's perfect. Like, that's right exactly where that should be. So personally, I would snatch that one up if I didn't already have my EVGA power supply. So there's my recommendation. Go for this Corsair RMX. Any of these EVGAs. This Seasonic here is also a great power supply. You can look at all of the ratings and you can see these all are highly reviewed, very good componentry. A lot of people are happy with them. If you enjoy gaming performance content, consider clicking that like button, maybe even subscribing. If you're already a subscriber, please visit patreon.com/thegrayingtech to learn how you can help me pay it forward. Okay, now that we have the PSU here in the studio, let's go ahead and take it off. The Mylar covering here. Now, not every power supply will ship with this kind of plastic, but it's designed to keep all of the components secure and kind of in place. On the back of the box, you'll see the most relevant information kind of front and center, right? So we have a 750 watt gold rated, that's 80 plus gold rated PSU. It is designed to be a certain temperature at full load. It does advertise that it has Japanese capacitors. Why? Japanese capacitors are considered to be some of the best in the world, which is why most higher end gaming oriented and gaming focused power supplies are going to include them, or at least advertise that they have included them. You can also see the direction of the fan, and let's go ahead and open this up. A lot of the times, this is how it's going to ship. See how it has just a little bit of tape right there? Sometimes, not always, but sometimes I've even seen establishments try to just ship this box with just a label on it, and that little sticker, trying to keep things together. Most power supplies that I have seen have this kind of flip open design, which is very nice because it gets you all of the access that you need, the information right there front and center. In the first cubby, we have a stack of cables. Right there you can see nice EVGA binding Velcro wraps on there. In the second, we have a power cord, and I'm going to guess, yes, even more cables. This is not to be surprised. This is a module power supply. Again, I recommend going modular. It makes the cable management portion of it easier. It makes the aesthetics easier, and you can kind of map everything out in a more logical way. That helps reduce some of your own maybe aesthetic anxiety, but it certainly helps with airflow. Inside of here is the actual power supply itself, along with the manual. Keep the manual. Some people throw manuals away. I try to keep my system manuals around as long as I possibly can. I put them in the box that the case comes in. That way I have all of the information kind of there, readily accessible. And if you saw the previous video, I keep that box in case I have to ship or move my system somewhere. This particular Mylar here is taped. So we're simply going to cut that. Now, sometimes you will notice that these are gray and have writing on them. I'll just call it that. Those typically are electrostatic bags. I'm a little bit surprised to see that they shipped this without an electrostatic bag, but you know, PSUs are not really that prone to electrostatic discharge issues, so that could be the reason why they didn't find it necessary for this particular one. So on here, you can see this is the module layout. This is what gives you access to a lot of the different configurations that you're going to be able to find. We also have this nice EVGA based fan assembly on this side as well. The power supply is designed to sit in your case. I'm trying to get the logo right. There we go. This is how it would sit. Power supplies are pretty much the most basic thing that you're going to install in your system. There's really nothing to do with them except mount it with a few screws and then start attaching the cables to it. Oh, one more thing here. I do have to point this out. Void if removed, not enforceable in the United States, not enforceable in the European Union. Okay, so that sticker right there, you can ignore that particular warning. Okay, looking through the accessories, we have a few screws that we can use to mount them in the case. Now, for aesthetic purposes, you might not want to use these because they're silver. And remember, that Phanteks case came with a lot of extra screws. I'm also seeing something here that is pretty awesome. This right here is a simple power supply jumper. Why this is awesome? If you have an inkling that your motherboard has failed, you can take off a certain cable, plug this in, your power supply will turn on. It will power the components other than the motherboard. So you will actually be able to see if your RGB is right, your fans are right. If you've attached a pump and gone water cooling, this is actually critical in being able to get more water into your loop, to circulate the water from the reservoir throughout the rest of the system. This helps you do that without having to turn the system on, which can be a little bit of a frightening thing, having to turn the system on and try to fill it with water. Ask me how I know. To mount a power supply in your case, you do have to find the power supply bracket. Now, these brackets often are used in order to make the actual assembly and installation very, very easy. Want to know why? You can see that there are 4 holes right here in the PSU bracket. You mount this to the power supply, and then you can simply slide in the PSU, tighten these down, and you're good to go. You don't have to physically mount it inside of the case outside of these 2 screws, which can become a little bit difficult to do, and some people find it really annoying to screw these in inside the case. So we're going to find the back portion of the case, which is right here. The fans themselves are going to draw air in and exhaust it out this portion right here. That means the micro filter that is in this case is actually going to be installed. We need this in place because fresh air is coming in this way, right above this filter. So we want to keep this clean. This is going to be something that you will need to make sure that you pay attention to and that you clean off on a regular basis. Now that we have this side, the exhaust side, looking up at us, you take the actual PSU bracket and slide it over. And you can see it does line up with 4 holes pretty much perfectly. So those are the 4 holes that we're going to use the black Phanteks screws. We're going to screw it down into there, and then we will actually mount it in the power supply. To do so, I will use my iFixit Mako. Link for this is down below. I like iFixit. I like their products, but I particularly like their politics. You see, they are fighting for your right to repair, which is why I support them. Now you noticed I looked through the different screws that I had. This one right here is traditionally one that you would use for installing components. It does have a socket-like side around these edges. This is traditional for a lot of the higher end manufacturers to have that design as well. That does help in quick manufacturing of these kind of units. And I'm going to go with the one that slides first, just to get that in place a little bit. And then we're going to screw down the rest of the screws. As I'm screwing these down, I'm going to start on one corner, and then I'm going to go to the complete opposite side. I'm going to go to its partner on the same side, and then I'm going to go across and finish up on the diagonal. This is a very standard way to install components and to screw things down. It ensures a very flat surface, which, while not critical, it does help make sure that things are properly secured. Now that this is ready to install, we're simply going to slide it in to the opening in the case. I do put my hand inside, which I know you can't see, but I'm using my hand to guide it along the rest of the way. Now, some case manufacturers will include an isolation pad that will help turn down any kind of vibrations that might occur with your power supply as well. In this particular instance, I don't see an anti-vibration pad, but it does have 2 places where it would stick up a little bit, and that does provide the internal support for the power supply inside of the case. As I was mentioning, this opening, you can see the power supply. This is where a lot of people put those screens, right there. On this side, you can see the power supply is now firmly installed. You will have some access along here, and it really depends upon how you want to do your cables. So let's sum things up. Generally speaking, I don't recommend anything below a 700 watt power supply. In this instance, I was able to find a 750. That's exactly what I wanted to go for this particular build. Computer components are getting even more hungry, and having a smaller power supply could put you in a situation in the future where maybe you try to install another component like a higher end GPU again, and it might require more power than what your PSU is capable of delivering. Additionally, the old adage that you need to be at least 50% of your power supply usage in order to not burn up your power supply or something like that is complete nonsense. You do want a modular power supply. You saw how easy it is to install one that way, and I will be able to clean up these cables a lot easier because this is a modular power supply. Fourth, what is this whole 80+ thing? There's different tiers of efficiency, but the best price to performance ratio does tend to be the gold standard. If you are going for something extremely high end, sure, take a look at platinum, maybe even titanium. If you're going to run this thing like a server or media server or something like that, sure, maybe titanium then would make sense. But for most gamers, gold is exactly what you want. To actually be able to install this, you saw that it has a traditional bracket. On this particular case, a lot of cases have that, which is why I call it traditional. 4 screws to attach the bracket and then slide the component into place. Look for any kind of pads that could isolate vibration. That can be important depending upon how tight of a fit, both inside the case and with this bracket. Screw the bracket down in place. The last particular item, take a special note of the airflow. Make sure that you are positioning your PSU so that it can get proper air in and proper air out. In this particular instance, it will draw from the bottom and exhaust out the back right here. In this case, we were able to use this micro film kind of material, and this will keep dust from being sucked into the power supply, which is actually very important in maintaining a clean system. Just be sure to clean this regularly.